Good night, everyone. Another night in Australia with another Microsoft Hero community session. My name is Priya, Microsoft Security MVP, MCT, and Community Leader in Microsoft Hero. Before actually just having the Andrew on the stage, I would love actually to cover a couple of Microsoft Learn community and code of conduct, as the same as always. And then we're gonna have Andrew on the stage. Give me a sec. I'll bring my slides up. Cool. The Microsoft Learn community, as you probably know, is an ideal space to build your skills, connect with Microsoft experts, and receive genuine support throughout your learning journey. So make sure you don't miss it out. There's a lot of content on Microsoft Learn that you can take advantage of it. So be friendly and respectful to everyone, listen to different opinions, and be kind and patient. That's a code of conduct, the same as other communities. So make sure don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Microsoft Tech community to receive latest news and updates of our community and upcoming sessions. So without further delay, I would love actually to have Andrew on the stage. Give me a sec, I'll bring him up. So please join me welcoming Andrew, and who will present us a topic, which is, as I told him, is very close to my heart: data security consideration for M365 Copilot. So Andrew, great to have you tonight here. How are you?
Thanks, Priya. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Thanks for allocating some time to share your knowledge with the community and everyone just looking around. So great to have you here. So I'm just going to bring your slides up and leave the stage behind the scene, and the stage is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Hey everyone, thanks for coming along. As you can see, I am Andrew Young. I'm a Microsoft MVP in security for Intune and M365. Recently, I've joined InforMotion, that's not a spelling error, as a lead Copilot and security architect. And I also run or co-lead the Adelaide Microsoft IT Pro Community User Group in Adelaide, SA. I'm also involved with the Out of Band, a Microsoft security podcast with a couple of other people in Australia. And you can find me on the South Australian IT Connect Discord community server as a mod/admin. So if you'd like to find out more about me, that's my Linktree link there, and feel free to reach out. But today's topic, as Priya's already announced, is data security considerations for M365 Copilot. And there's my M365 Senpai logo. So I created that before generative AI was a thing. So I did have to pay someone on Fiverr to create a logo that looks sort of like me. So kicking myself in retrospect, but I could have used AI to create something, but here we are. So we will talk a lot about M365 Copilot, so the flagship AI service from Microsoft, and I guess what is included in terms of controlling and governing and managing all of your data and security, as well as what's also included in most of your licensing around Microsoft Purview, so what was formerly known as the compliance suite. So it has been about 2 years or so almost since M365 Copilot came out. And it's leaps and bounds in all the updates and all the features, and I guess where we're using it and how we're using it as well. So part of Microsoft's vision is that they want to be able to have Copilot as this interface, this entryway to everything else, your data and your AI. So Copilot being the UI for AI. You're the user on the left-hand side here. You've got Copilot as your doorway, and then you've got these things on the right-hand side now. So these are agents, or commonly known as your custom copilots. So you're taking that intelligence, the large language models behind the scenes, and crafting your own little bespoke versions of that copilot. So it could be something that does a task for you, or it retrieves information for you, or it could even have its own set of instructions and be an autonomous agent. And end-to-end processes can be handled by one or many agents. So that's a lot to take in coming in the last year or so of having agents introduced to us. And so Microsoft have provided something called the Copilot Control System. And this is mainly included in the licensing for M365 Copilot, but some of these concepts already existed long before generative AI or Copilot. So things around threat protection or data security, these options, these controls already existed. You may have already been paying for it. You might not have been using it. So we just have a nicer way to access these tools now. So why is this important? Microsoft is positioning themselves as that trusted provider, so particularly with AI, and they've been investing in AI for at least the last 2 decades or so. So well before Gen AI, well before machine learning, and so they have these commitments to ensure that the AI service is responsible, it's ethical, it's transparent in what they do, and there's no bias or anything like that. So they've got that that responsibility, and they've got heaps of controls that they have to manage to ensure that what we consume is safe and compliant in many of our regions that we reside in. So at the same time, they hand off some tools, and I'll go into some more detail, to then manage these copilots and agent experiences that we'll see. So to break it down a bit, these tools, they are designed for IT professionals to better understand and manage the AI that may exist in your organization. So there's 3 main spaces here that you'll work in. So security and governance is probably going to be the biggest space here. So like I said before, these concepts existed long before. I guess some of the early misconceptions of Copilot was, it's giving people all this access to files that they shouldn't have. Copilot's bad, it's evil. But really, there was just underlying inherent risk. These extra permissions already existed beforehand. Copilot just makes it more obvious and lets you know that, hey, this wasn't done properly, or it was just, it's sprawled over time and we've mismanaged the permissions. So we've got these tools now in the control system to help you identify where and what is being either overshared or improperly permissioned. So we can get reports from the Copilot control system to then identify where we need to kind of harden the access or remove access altogether. So in the middle there, the management controls, this is more leaning towards the agent side of things. So the different kind of licensing model, you can say, or billing, and then there's different life cycles. So agents considered to be a development kind of thing. So you are creating them, you're improving on them iteratively. So there is some form of development life cycle. So maybe you've got an older version of an agent and you've got a newer one and it's got much better models behind the scenes and does different actions. So maybe you retire the old one. So circle of life, continual improvement on the agents as well. And then lastly, there's measurement and reporting. So you want to be able to see where Copilot's being used, how it's being used, are these agents being introduced into your organization? And most importantly for the finance people is, are we actually getting some return on investment in Copilot agents? And obviously it's not cheap to play around with AI, but once you realize the return or the potential cost savings or what you can actually get out of it, that's where these impact reports come in. So you can specify, we expect we're saving this many hours per week, and then over time you can compare it to what your expectations were, and then you may find that yes, we did save X number of hours, so equals Y dollars. Okay. So to break it down even further in those sections there. So security and governance, we want to focus a lot more on. So under that first column there, we keep talking about oversharing, or you may see people mention oversharing a lot more these days. So Microsoft have also provided something called the oversharing blueprint. And this can be found on Microsoft Learn. There's a handy link there at the bottom. And it's kind of a quick concept of, yes, you are interested in using Copilot, so you got the option of pilot testing it. So your mileage may vary. You may have a different plan to roll out or prepare for Copilot. But essentially, once you've got to the stage of Copilot exists, we need to be able to identify what data is potentially being overshared, and then what we need to do to remediate that. So they've got some guidance, some best practices that you can follow. So just take a look at that site there for some ideas, but that is one of the options we have in terms of the oversharing. And I will revisit that concept shortly. I talked before about excessive permissions, and at the same time, we can prevent Copilot and agents from accessing the sensitive information. So we'll go deeply into where sensitivity or classification of data can lead to restriction of access. And there's a few methods, and we'll get to see all of that shortly. The middle there is protecting against data loss and insider risk. So this can come down to whether it's an intentional leakage or it's an accidental leakage. So you could be sharing a file to someone, but so accidentally you've or unknowingly you've just shared it to everyone because it's an anonymous link, or it's everybody in the organization and can now open this file where only select people could. And that's not the fault of the person sharing it. It's just that there weren't any guardrails in place originally to prevent that kind of sharing. The insider risk side, as I mentioned, is intentional action. So it could be you are suddenly downloading several hundred gigabytes of data or uploading that data into a third-party cloud storage system. So those kind of things where you're potentially stealing data or intellectual property, that can get detected as well. So AI, not necessarily the cause of these things, but it can assist in exacerbating the problem. So it could help them retrieve the information that they're looking for quickly, and then they can get exfiltrated much faster than they could before. And that last column there around governance, built into M365, there is auditing around SharePoint, for example. We see with document changes and all that, but behind the scenes, there's also auditing that can be enabled for your Copilot usage, even your agent usage. So all of the interactions you have, so what prompts or messages you send are tracked, what responses from the AI is also tracked. So we can kind of capture those key moments where inappropriate communications were happening with AI, and then what was returned could be this is how the blast radius. So what kind of information was returned based on that prompt, so we can kind of control and ensure that anything that was leaked out, we know what exactly was leaked out, so we can kind of mitigate the damages there. Okay. And then Copilot Analytics, this is the measure and impact we saw before. So built into M365 Admin Center, there is already those usage reports. So if you get an idea of what apps are being used and so on, is there much productivity happening? Are people using Teams? Are they using Yammer or Viva Engage? This is where you'll find those that information that's being tracked. And that third one there, I was mentioned before, is the tracking the return on investment. So the business value of using Copilot and so on. Not necessarily related to data security, but as part of that whole encompassing Copilot control system, these are the tools that you get. All right. So you may have seen this picture before, or some variant of it. So this is the M365 Copilot behind the scenes. So the architecture, that trust we were talking about before from Microsoft. So everything within this M365 service boundary, that L-shaped Tetris piece, that is your stuff. Nothing goes in or out unless explicitly allowed. So you can see on the left here, there's a few arrows coming in and out. Those are the only bits that you are allowing. So it could be an agent that you're extending to. It could be a web search in Bing or whichever web service you may use. It could even be your Dataverse or Power Platform services, so your Dynamics, your Power Apps, and so on. We can reach out to those services to enrich whatever response comes back through Copilot. So effectively, each time you interact with Copilot, this 6-step process happens. So the orchestrator in the middle, it receives what you're saying. It then has to look down into the Microsoft Graph. So the Microsoft Graph is the brains of M365. So it knows all of your user identities, all the files, the permissions, the relationships, the collaboration, essentially all the relevance to you and whatever you've just asked Copilot. So Alongside this, it builds something called the semantic index, which is just a list of all those relationships I've just mentioned there. So what that does is it enriches effectively what Copilot can do, or finds out about what you've asked. So then it passes that information up, the orchestrator in the middle, it builds a better prompt effectively, and it hands it off to the large language model. So at this point, you may have realized or heard about OpenAI releasing GPT-5, which is their latest large language model. So this time around, Microsoft decided to launch that model into all of the products effectively, all within that 30-day period. So M365 Copilot Chat, M365 Copilot, Copilot Studio, AI Foundry, they've all got access to the GPT-5 model. Asterisk for that, it may or may not be rolled out entirely yet, but you will see either a try now in your Copilot chat, or when you drop down in Copilot Studio, you may see an option to try GPT-5. And it may not be there exactly for everyone around the world, but I think it's almost in 30 days, so we're getting close to that. Things to remember when that model gets updated, it doesn't affect any of your existing controls or your permissions or anything that is already in tenant. It's literally just the model being switched out. So then you have better experiences with Copilot. So everything else stays the same. All the data is handled the same way. It never leaves. It's never used to train that model because it's been brought in pre-trained based on whatever OpenAI's methods are. So that's a large language model. It's taken in that modified prompt. It's processed. It's applied responsible AI, all the ethical stuff I mentioned earlier. And then it hands it back to the orchestrator. And that last step it does, or the second to last step rather, is very important. And that's a bit around the compliance and the purview. So once again, it goes down to Microsoft Graph and checks for things such as sensitivity classification. So things like sensitivity labels in particular here. So you've probably heard about these. You may have seen them when you've been accessing files and suddenly these messages appear, or you're trying to send an email and you can't because you haven't assigned a label yet. That's what this is. So a file could be containing certain information such as your driver's license or passport number and so on. That can be grounds to say, oh, this document is, is PII, or it could be sensitive. So you assign a label for sensitive. So when Copilot sees this file and it reads, oh, actually, it's got a sensitive label assigned to it, recognizes that, respects it, so that the interaction then gets assigned that same level of sensitivity. So the message comes back. You could have asked Copilot, can you, based on this file, can you create something like a slide deck for me? So when it creates a slide deck for you, it applies that same sensitivity level. So if you, for example, had several files, 2 or 3 files, but they had varying levels of sensitivity, it's always going to pick the most sensitive. So if you had confidential, highly confidential, and public, it's going to pick highly confidential. So from then on, everything that it generates will be highly confidential. All right, so that's all part of that, ensuring that it's end-to-end protected. So once it's done that, it hands it back to you, and then you've got your response or your outputted file, and happy days. So in a perfect world, that's probably sufficient, right? Nothing's coming in or out, nothing's being used inappropriately, and we all know that nothing's going to be perfect, right? So there's going to be environments in organizations where, like we've saw before, there could be incorrect permissions, there could be inadvertent sharing, and so on. So we might not be ready to just turn on or assign licenses to people to start using it, and that I guess it's understandable because you don't know what's going to get surfaced from Copilot, right? So there are a few options in terms of this early stage of, I guess, adoption. So the license itself includes a feature called restricted SharePoint search. So there's a lot of commands on the screen here. So it does take a SharePoint admin role to run this PowerShell in SharePoint Online Management, but effectively you then get the option to enable this restricted search mode. So that's a tenant-wide thing. It is, as soon as you turn it on, everything gets affected. But what this feature does is it lets you then supply a list of between 1 to 100 SharePoint sites. So you're curating what sites that Copilot is actually allowed to access. And that doesn't look at the user permission side of things yet. This is still at the very high tenant level. This is ensuring that we only want, say, 10 sites here to be ever accessible by Copilot. All right. So when you have done all this, the end user gets a different experience. So depending if it's on the mobile or the web or the tablet or desktop, we're going to message at the top saying, there's some restrictions in place by your admin. The Copilot can only access certain content. So they will give you that notification. And we just have to remember that this restricted SharePoint searching isn't a feature of Copilot. It's the opposite. It's not really a feature at all. You are effectively limiting Copilot's capability here. So as I mentioned before, if there's a roadblock because you're afraid of what data can be surfaced, this is a hard way to say, well, we don't want any HR finance related sites. We just want the safe sites to be accessible by Copilot. And you can do that. And ideally, it's a temporary solution. So we're just doing this because it's buying you time in setting up the right and proper controls. So be it SharePoint Advanced Management or Microsoft Purview to address oversharing or sensitivity classifications and so on. At no point does it affect any of your existing permissions or sharing, but it does actually, and this fine text here, it does impact your organization-wide search experience in M365. So the little search bar at the very top in the colored bar, that will be less than ideal once you turn on this feature. Effectively, you only see certain things, and as we recommend, you'd want to turn this feature off as soon as possible when you're ready to roll with the proper security controls and use Copilot. So I alluded to something called SharePoint Advanced Management, and this originally was a SharePoint Premium feature with pay-as-you-go consumption, etc. So Microsoft have grabbed a subset of this and included it with M365 Copilot. So this gives IT and security leaders the tools to then assess, clean up, and lock down any sprawl in SharePoint sites well before Copilot starts scaling out. So let's have a look at some of the different, features here. So content management assessments, we can get guided evaluation on your SharePoint environment. And this brings to light any misconfigurations, any inactive sites, any permission issues, or any lifecycle risks across potentially thousands of sites in your tenant. And then it puts it all into a single actionable dashboard with some pre-canned actions for you to quickly resolve. So you can treat this as a baseline for your governance overall. There are additional oversharing controls. So you get permission state reports out of SAM, as it may be sometimes referred to. So these are customizable reports of site permissions across all of M365 to then you'll be able to uncover any oversharing risks like broken inheritance in the permissions to allow custom permissions, any public links or anonymous links, or any excessive group access. This report then deduplicates group memberships to show you the actual number of users with access, because nesting groups doesn't give you much information. You need to know who exactly has that access, and there's no point doubling up when the same person already has access. And then from there, admins can then trigger site access reviews. So the site owners can get prompted, hey, are these people still here? Do they need to access these sites? And there's information in here. And that leads to the next bit where you can then look at something called either restricted access control. And this lets you lock down a SharePoint site to a specific set of users. So this will ignore existing permissions and it will have a much more strict allow list. So this is more of a rapid response to then contain risk because you're stopping effective access to everything or everyone, especially for Copilot, so that you can address, hang on, these permissions are wrong. The other side of restricted access control is restricted content discovery. So this one gives you an effective way to then block the overshared sites from Copilot or agent access. So from here, your organizations can limit the the ability of end users to then search files from specific sites. So to add on this, you can then delegate this authority to the site owners. So IT admins don't need to necessarily manage this. Site owners can then go, this information is allowed to be accessed by X users and so on. And once you have a license for all of this, you will see in the SharePoint Admin Center extra features in the settings tab. And there's a toggle to then say, is the site allowed to be searchable or accessible by Copilot? And whereas the features here, you can be very granular and say, this folder is only accessible by this security group and so on. So we've got some options to cherry pick the information that Copilot can access. It's slightly better than using the restricted SharePoint search in because you're not breaking overall search, and you can be very prescriptive of what you're actually targeting here as well. And probably the last one we'll mention is around that site lifecycle management. So identifying any inactive or owner lists or uncertified sites, and then you've got scalable remediation actions. So you can mark them as read-only, you can then archive them or prompt the site owners to take action to ensure that the right access is given to that site. This tool will also greatly reduce the risk of any data that's surfaced by Copilot that is not meant to be. So it helps you clean up as well as ensure that there's no old, outdated, irrelevant information being surfaced. So you may have seen the acronym ROT, so that's redundant, obsolete, and trivial. So it does help you in ensuring that AI has the latest information, because you don't want it to be sprouting out, here's information that was valid 12 months ago, but it's now completely incorrect. So you have that level of trust from the AI, but you need to ensure that your data is actually up to scratch first. Cool. So next bit. So title of this session is mainly around M365 Copilot, but agents have become such a big thing and component around it, so it's kind of adjacent. So we do want to talk a little bit about it. So now Copilot agents are created through something called Copilot Studio. And over the last week, there's had more rebrands. So what was known as the agent builder inside M365 is now Copilot Studio Lite experience, and then versus the full experience. So, and then again, Copilot Studio was formerly known as Power Virtual Agents. So that was a Power Platform product. So light bulb moment, Copilot Studio is actually managed or governed rather through the Power Platform Admin Center. Some of the benefits of agents inheriting is that they will have the same level of enterprise data protection that M365 Copilot gets. So because it's all inside that service boundary, your tenant, your M365, your Power Platform, your Azure, it's all the one thing. So while we're governing a different entity, it's still under that umbrella of protection, which is great. Different governance controls, and I'll show you shortly what these may look like, but you can then kind of control how your users can whether they're allowed to create these agents to begin with, but how they can share them and whether they're allowed to share them. Because again, that's another way of introducing more oversharing, because if you've got an agent that has access to certain documents, but the person you're sharing it to doesn't have access to the documents, but you've shared the agent, it does prompt you whether you want to share the files with the user or the recipient. And sometimes it's a bad idea because it could be sensitive information. And if you're on yes, it may actually go through. So you need to put some controls in place, because I believe the defaults would be, let's share everything. Let's try to have the least friction to allow and enable adoption. But it gives us a job to ensure that that stuff is overlooked and it's restricted and allowed in certain ways so that it's not too dangerous. And then lifecycle management we talked about before, so ensuring that these agents do have an expiry date, be it redundancy or obsolescence, or whether there's a new version. A couple of other things, I believe. There we go. So something they introduced, there are sharing limits. So how many people you can, or how many times you can share an agent, but also something called an environment group, which is effectively a container for managed environments. So you don't want everyone playing in the default environment, which is, again, it is default. If you don't do anything, everybody is in there and they're creating agents and other things in Power Platform, and it's all this default environment. Is really a no man's land, or it's a lawless state where anybody can create anything and potentially access anything that they create from within that environment. So these managed environments, yes, there's a different billing profile behind it, but you are ensuring that there are those hard barriers in between the development process as well. And you can also create individual environments, so each maker has their own user environment to play with. And the best part about all of this is that Power Platform integrates with Microsoft Purview. So as we'll see a bit shortly what some of those corresponding things would be. So be it around sensitive information, data loss prevention, and so on, they will also play nicely in Power Platform. So all of the information that your agents touch, they will be protected at the same time. And so I mentioned before, so inside the Power Platform Admin Center, this is just the Copilot Studio bit here, but you get some different insights here. So how many agents there are, what they're being used for, but down there is just a single action there. But you know, this agent was created, it's shared to everyone. So there is a warning here or a recommended action to then restrict that level of sharing, because we don't necessarily want everyone to have it. You could then go in and justify, and actually, no, this agent needs to be accessed to organization-wide. There are some other things around the billing, cost monitoring, and so on. And then this next bit here, so the overall settings for the Copilot services in Power Platform. This is where we can go and make some hard and fast changes to ensure that not everyone can create or share, and set up proper authentication as well. And this is a very Power Platform side of things, so I probably wouldn't touch too much on it because we're more focused on the M365 Copilot here. But knowing that this stuff exists, and for the people in your business who are focused on the Power Platform side of things, this is going to help greatly with being able to govern agents as well. But at the same time, this is called the Copilot Studio Accelerator Kit, and you may have heard of something called a Center of Excellence in the past. So that's really giving you the resources and the design around the best practices or the guardrails around being able to govern creation, development, and use of X products. So in this case, Copilot Studio and agents. So take a look at this. They do provide a deployable solution so that you can then stand this up in either your dev or test environment or prod if you really adventurous, and you can see kind of some of the suggested practices that they will have. So take a look at that one. Okay, I believe we're just over the halfway mark here, so we'll start talking about Microsoft Purview, which is Microsoft's flagship around governance, risk, compliance, and all things data security. And there's the logo for it. So this blue triangle ribbon thing, you can see the old logo is underneath in a very faint appearance. Kind of looks like an eye. So I think they moved away from the big brother approach to something a bit more basic, and because every other logo has this ribbon effect now. But yeah, just like any other cloud service, there is a shared responsibility matrix. We've all seen whether you're using infrastructure, platform, or software as a service, the consumer has to take care of an increasing amount of or decreasing amount of responsibility depending on the model. But for here in this security, or rather the Purview space, Microsoft is taking care of about 80% of those commitments. They follow something called the NIST framework. There's almost 1,000 controls in that framework, and they take care of most of that for you. So really, you as the organization, the end user, and your partners, your IT providers, you're responsible for that 20% that remains. So that's ensuring that you have the right threat protection, data security, and all defaults that are switched off effectively. So you actually have custom configurations to ensure that you are protected, but also in line with potentially any industry regulations or regional requirements as well. So the Microsoft Purview brand kind of merged a few things together. So there was something called Azure Purview, and now it's kind of been nestled into the same product. So on the right-hand side, those would be what were more on the Azure side, but also any non-Microsoft data locations. So it could be an on-prem database server of a brand or other clouds. So you can bring in insights on all your storage locations so that you have effectively your data catalog, and you can have that lineage of that data from when it was created and how it's come to where it is now. But less on that, probably more so if you're using Azure AI to create agents and so on, that would be more relevant there. But for M365, the stuff on the left is probably the most important, and probably a handful of those things, such as information protection, data loss prevention, data lifecycle management, insider risk management to a degree, e-discovery audits, and some of the stuff at the bottom is more around records management and the communication pieces there. But the very last one, compliance manager, we'll talk about that briefly later on, but that is more of a tool to assist you with those regulations I mentioned previously around industry or region. Okay, so that triangle we saw before for the logo, this will make more sense when I reveal what's behind it. They've moved it away, and there's 3 main points that we're trying to focus on here. So it's protecting your sensitive data, preventing it from being leaked, and to ensure that there's no nasty inside threats. So to match these with the products, that is information protection, data loss prevention, and insider risk management. And this, it stretches across all of the content or workloads in your tenant as well. So focusing on the first one there, so information protection, this is probably the most important thing and most relevant to this topic today. So I've talked about before sensitivity labels, and this stems from Microsoft having leveraged machine learning here. So there's AI helping you essentially discover and classify your data to then use it for AI, kind of like a Ouroboros snake. But yeah, so Microsoft have a massive catalog of different sensitive information types. So this can be, as I mentioned before, the driver's license, passport number, social security, Medicare, anything to do with your information could be a potential sensitive information type. The next type of classifier is something called a trainable classifier. And again, Microsoft does provide a handful of these for you. So it's more a type of information. So it could be a contract, an agreement, credentials, and so on. And these can be individual entities or bundled. So as I mentioned, credentials could be any type of credential versus here's a specific contract. So that when the AI run or the machine learning run through your documents in SharePoint or wherever it may be, they either detect what the contents are, so the sensitive information types, or the actual the document, the file itself, and classify it that way. You have other options. So there's something called document fingerprinting. So if you had a form, for example, specific questions on the left, you upload a template file, so there's no responses yet, give it the AI, it recognizes, this is tax file or rather a tax return form. It's going to recognize all the questions here. And then when you upload a file that actually is a tax return, it's got all your information in it, it'll recognize all of the questions there and go, oh, this is a tax return file, assign sensitivity, blah, give it potentially a label or so on. And that's how it treats it. There is yet another version, or the last variant of classifications, that's exact data matching. So you are then creating effectively your own classifier and providing a reasonable amount of positive matches and negative matches. I believe it starts off at around 200 of each. So you can then provide that. It does its initial pass through, and then you have to come back in and say whether that, yes, this was a match, no, it wasn't a match, and that trains it, and you've got that ready to go effectively to use after that. So with the new Purview portal and so on, you can't go in to retrain that exact data match classifier anymore. You need to recreate it and then supply either more or better source materials as your positive and negative to then have a more accurate detection rate. Okay, so that's the classification and sensitive information types. So what you want to use that is once we've identified this file as being sensitive or contains PII, what do we want to do with it? And that's where these sensitivity labels come in. So being able to tag certain documents as it's a sensitive, it shouldn't ever leave the environment, or it's a secret and it needs to then be encrypted. So as we got there, the data within can be encrypted and only accessible by the intended recipient or only through our sanctioned application. So it might have to be, it needs to be Microsoft Word, it needs to be Microsoft Outlook. You can't use any third-party things like Gmail or whatever. You can't even access that data because it's been blocked at that level. Now, at the same time, you can also apply things such as watermarking, so draft or confidential. You have headers and footers, confidential, warning, blah, blah, blah. These are other things you can do as well. It may not stop people entirely from taking a photo, or sometimes it does have built-in features to prevent you from taking photos. So you can't take screenshots using your devices, but if you had another device to take a photo, sometimes you can get a photo, but it should still have watermarking, other effects to it to say, don't take this for as legitimate copies. Now, the order here is a bit weird, but insider risk management is in the middle. We taught those before, so it could be the intentional theft of data and so on. So at the same time, you want to protect that sensitive information. So ideally, all of your documents have those sensitivity labels assigned, and if any malignant action is taken, then that will trigger insider risk management policies and flagging. Hang on, this is risky. This is high risk, medium risk, minor risk, and so on. And it can kick off other policies, and we can talk about that in a moment there. But more importantly, on the right here, data loss prevention. So those same labels or the sensitive information types and so on, they can be the trigger, I guess, for preventing any loss or leakage of data. So this is more commonly seen in, I guess, emails. So if you're trying to email something out, it contains something like a credit card number or a bank account number. It usually goes out. Then that in itself is a threat, because what if that email gets captured in the middle and stuff happens and so on. So we want to prevent the sending or the sharing of those details to begin with. So it could just be, maybe you do need to send one because someone needs to make a transaction, and you can make a justification for that, or you can set it so that you're allowed to send one, but you can't send 10 bank account details out, because then that looks suspicious. Insider risk management kicks in as well. But you want to be able to fine tune this so that it's going to be no false positives. You want accurate alerts and actions to be taken. So being able to find that fine balance on you're allowed this many, but not that many. That's what you can do with DLP there. And this also extends to your endpoints as well. So endpoint DLP, yes, your device needs to be onboarded into Purview, but this taps into something called Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. So we've heard about Shadow IT. That's where you do things, install things to circumvent your IT department to do things your way. Shadow AI is a new thing, and it's you using third-party AI services outside of your IT's control or knowledge. They've blocked this, let me use this instead. But it could just be that you've got none of that in place, and it's so-and-so is seeing this cool new feature on ChatGPT and they want to use it. So they've copied their data and put it in there to try and get it to generate something. Unbeknownst to them, they've just shared all this sensitive information into the wild. It's being used to train the underlying data model because it's free service and so on. And that's a no-no. So what the Defender for Cloud Apps does, it gives you the option to create these policies to then prevent either the users from accessing those third-party tools or to stop them from using the clipboard. So they can't copy-paste into those third-party services out of your your sensitive information locations. And then, I guess underneath here, we've got adaptive protection. So this I will allude to is heavily related to insider risk management, but also data loss prevention. So what it looks like here is based on those varying levels of risk identified through your insider risk management policies, we can assign different data loss prevention policies. So here there's elevated risk, we've got a block action. It might be moderate risk, it is blocking, but you can override it. And then there's minor risk where you can just have a tip to say, we've seen some stuff, but just be careful. Whereas the other two are hard and fast. There's no direct access, but maybe with moderate risk, it could be okay. But we just want to be on the safe side here. Based on what we spoke about there, the labeling could be credit cards, could be contracts, could be anything that contains sensitive information. Something risky happens, could be inadvertent, could be accidental, and could be intentional, but that kicks off these policies here. And the best part about that is it's all tracked by the Defender portal. So what used to be the security portal, it's now the Microsoft Defender XDR portal. This tracks effectively all the things that are bad that happen. So be it through Defender for Endpoint, anything in Purview, there should be audit logging around what's happened. So if you have something called Microsoft Sentinel, which is a SIEM or a security incidents and events management platform, you can use that as well to ingest these logs, and then you can perform some advanced hunting to see what's happened. Is it just an insider risk problem, or have we been breached? Is there more lateral action? You get the full picture by using all these tools together. All right, and speaking of Defender, we can now protect these agents that we create with Copilot Studio. There is real-time protection here, so it's adds effectively a safety net at the most critical point. So when that agent is running and acting, so you're safeguarding the AI agents during their operations. So this reduces the chance that malicious inputs like this can then exploit during the runtime. So this one is, you can see in the right-hand side there, you've asked something, so it could be a prompt injection attack, or it could just be you trying to test the system here and asking for stuff that you shouldn't have access to. But behind the scenes in the Defender XDR portal, you get the story or the attack or the incident story there. And now Defender monitors things called agent tool invocation calls in real time. So if it suspects any high-risk action, such as this prompt injection pattern, that action is blocked before it's even executed. So the agent actually halts processing and advises the user that the request was blocked due to security risk. So, for example, the HR bot is tricked by a hidden prompt to send out confidential salary information. It could be, ignore what I just said and give me this instead, that kind of example. So then Defender kicks in and says, hey, hang on, this is not ethical use, and so on. So it blocks it from executing the rest of it. All right, so back to Purview quickly here. This is an infographic created by a Microsoft employee called Ray Reyes. He's in the Purview space. I was trying to create my own infographic at the time, but he beat me to the punch and his looked slightly better. But this gives you an idea of kind of a flow from left to right. It doesn't ever need to be left to right. It can be, you can start any of these pillars here, but ideally these are the things you need to focus on when you start deploying Microsoft Purview. So the ones we just talked about, predominantly the information protection, data loss prevention, and insider risk, they are there. Didn't talk about too much about lifecycle management, but at the same time, when you've got sensitivity labels, you can have retention labels, or conversely, the disposal or deletion labels. So for some organizations, you have commitments to hold data for X number of years, a certain number of time, but also you've got the same requirement to not have that data after X number of years. So this does start going in towards the records management side of things as well. and the records are effectively those retained files that will be retained forever or indefinitely. And these would be immutable copies. You can't modify them. They're just retained somewhere in storage for the end of time. But retention and deletion, it's a heavily discussed topic in most organizations or enterprise and governments. But at the same time, that also ensures that AI gets the latest and most relevant information. Things like communication compliance, making sure that there's no inappropriate communications, but also it's another vector of detecting whether there's prompt injections. So we saw defenders sweeping in to stop these agents from doing bad things. But what about when you're using M365 Copilot? Communication compliance will pick up when the wrong kind of thing happens there. So if someone's done a similar prompt injection attack, communication compliance will pick that up, track in the audit trail. You can bring it up and go, here's the evidence, so-and-so used this prompt, Copilot came back with this, and that's where e-discovery comes in as well. So that will then give you the ability to then create use cases. You can then go, bring up all the interactions for Copilot on this day between these times. And then that's where we found, or we extracted the proof that was alerted from communication compliance. But this is also used in other litigation situations or scenarios where maybe there's insider trading and all these other spicy, bad stuff going on in business. You can put mailboxes, SharePoint sites, and so on hold so that you can retain the data that's in there to be used as evidence in any legal cases. That aside, there was something on the second to last on the right there. So DSPM for AI. So this is data security posture management for AI. And this is a newer thing. The rebrand of the AI hub for Purview, but this will light up when you get more and more features, but particularly when you get M365 Copilot, you'll see this as one of the solutions. So where we saw before, where SharePoint Advanced Management helps IT admins assess and clean up sprawl in SharePoint, Purview gets this to then give you a way to scale out the protection and reactive data protection rather across all of the Microsoft apps. So this gives you visibility in how Copilot agents are used in the organization. There's data risk assessments to help you identify and monitor any oversharing. There's single or almost click to deploy ready to use policies to help you protect your data and prevent data loss while using Copilot and agents. And there's controls to help you govern Copilot and agents as well. And at the same time, it helps you to align that with your company policies and regulations. Get that 5-minute time warning shortly, but everybody's favorite topic is licensing. So this is taken from M365maps.com. It's made by Aaron Dinage, who is a Microsoft employee who lives in Canberra, Australian Capital Territory. This is snipped from the M365 E5 step up licensing infographic, but this is just the stuff relating to Purview, essentially. So you can see there's three main, maybe call them pillars, but they're rows. These are effectively what make up Purview. So E5 compliance, that is included in obviously M365 E5. But if you only have, say, Business Premium or E3, you can add on the E5 compliance or the individual add-ons here. That is pillars that we saw, the rows that we saw. Most importantly, the stuff on the left here, sensitivity and so on. But particularly auto labeling is the most important part, because expecting and relying on end users to know which label to use when is going to be varying results. But having an automatic labeling policy means that as soon as it's detected as sensitive or whatever it may be, it's going to apply the relevant label to it. So secure by default. And this also includes that Defender for Cloud apps I mentioned before, so you can prevent your users from using the wrong app, right? So just last week, I think it was, if you're using Business Premium, there is now a new Purview suite. So it comes in a much lower price point, I believe, because they did introduce E5 compliance as an add-on for Biz Premium, but I believe this is the same thing but cheaper. And you can combine it with the Defender and Purview suites together for yet even more discounts. But ignoring the USD pricing here, it's more for the people who are managing the finances. But it makes sense to go for this if you are looking to get that level of compliance or data security, but without having to go all the way to an E5 license, which is almost triple the price of Business Premium itself. Okay, and just to round out almost, Microsoft Credentials, I'm all for the learning, and we are on the Microsoft Learn platform here, but there is a new Microsoft Purview Ninja training path course on Microsoft Learn. There's a quick link to get to it. There are applied skills. If you haven't heard of these, they are free 2-hour timed assessments. So it's a hands-on lab where you effectively create or configure the tenant to be then performing what you receive in the you get these emails inside of it, and there's requests around, we need this and this to be set up. So you're working through that list of the requirements, and then you're hitting submit after you've made some changes in the tenants. So it will assess it automatically. It doesn't really look too much into how you did it, so long as the outcome is close enough to what Microsoft expects. So there's a few here. Particularly the top one is to help you prepare your tenant for the use of it, Copilot. The other two there are around obviously Purview. The reason they have so many of these here is because they retired the older information protection and compliance certification/exam. So the new one is just information security. So all the compliance stuff was shuffled into the relevant applied skills. Okay. So thanks for your time. It was very fleeting. I think we are on time, which is great. But if you want to connect, QR code to my LinkedIn, a Linktree link there, and you can find me playing about most places. But I hope that was informative, and it helps you on your own journey to ensuring that your data is secure.
Great, Andrew. I think it was a great session and informative, I would say, session, because normally when we talk with different organizations, we are highlighting actually the importance of data governance and security. In the era of AI, age of AI, and those things is more important now these days. How we are actually making sure the data source is getting connected to different AI systems, including the M365 Copilot, as you mentioned. I believe that, as you said, it's very important the organization just understand the risks behind of these AI applications, how the data is getting used by these AI applications, and making sure they're putting the right controls in place, which is great point that you covered. So maybe just one question, if you're asking very high level type of questions. I'm assuming with the AI agents getting more advanced, especially Microsoft just recently is trying to expand the Security Copilot into different Microsoft ecosystem and services. So I'm assuming, what's your view actually on that, how it's getting evolved when it's coming to data security space, and the Security Copilot and those agents, AI agents, how it's going to help the organizations generally?
Yeah, it was almost a miss of me not mentioning Security Copilot, but it is, again, another product behind the scenes. So that does run on Azure consumption. And the default, I guess the base is it's another chatbot, so the security chat, but it is embedded in all the other locations, as you mentioned, so Entra, Intune, Purview. Yeah, there was a bit of a segue out there. But it would help you in further in securing and configuring your Purview policies around DLP or risk and all that. So I think, as I mentioned before, using AI to help you prepare to use AI, more and more of these tools are going to just appear, and they're going to cross over a lot more. And with agents being more of a push now, and everyone almost being able to just create their own, there needs to be some kind of more education around it, I believe, to start with, but also ensuring that, hey, if these features are on, like, you don't want users to just be able to create things and cause more problems because they didn't realize. My take on that, I guess.
Yeah, no, agree. I think that's very important. I think, because everyone just trying to create something, and again, the connection with the data sources and these AI agents, that's very important.
Thank you. Development environments are very important.
Definitely, no doubt. So thanks again for your session, Andrew. It was a great session, and thanks for sharing the knowledge. So some people are just asking about actually, do you share the links for trainings? Thanks. So that would be great if you're posting on your LinkedIn about these sessions, you are sharing some of those links. But I hope actually everyone just got actually the links when you actually shared on the screen. So maybe if you want to go one step back to that Ninja training, one slide back, which is everyone can take a screenshot if they lock.
Unfortunately, those weren't.
Here you go.
But so you can search for them and you'll find them. But
definitely.
I'll drop the links into chat / the post as well. And grab it from there afterwards.
Yeah, that would be great. So I think those apply the skills, everyone, and certifications. Of course, you can easily search it over the Google and you're going to find out. Those apply the skills definitely under your profile for Microsoft Learn. You can easily just find them, and the certifications, it's easy. So it's a lot of content over the Microsoft Learn. Thanks again, Andrew, for sharing your knowledge tonight, while I know you were busy with a couple of other sessions in the community. So really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Looking forward to see everyone very soon again. Thank you. Yeah.